The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked asphalt of Route 71, turning the small town of Smithville into a shimmering mirage of heat waves and dust. Jake Sullivan wiped the grease from his hands with a worn red rag, the kind that had seen more oil changes than most mechanics saw in a lifetime. At 42, his hands told stories, scars from engine burns, calluses from wrench work, and one particularly nasty mark across his left palm from his time in Afghanistan, a reminder of when everything went sideways during his third tour. The Steel Brotherhood Motorcycle Club's garage sat on the edge of town, a corrugated metal building that had been there since the 70s. Inside, 3 Harley-Davidsons were in various states of repair, their chrome catching the afternoon light that filtered through the dusty windows. The smell of motor oil, leather, and coffee created an atmosphere that Jake had come to associate with peace, something he'd fought hard to find after coming home. "Jake, you gonna finish that carburetor today, or just stare at it?" called out Vincent "Wrench" Morrison, a 55-year-old former Marine who'd lost his left leg below the knee in Desert Storm. His prosthetic clicked against the concrete floor as he maneuvered around a lifted Sportster. Wrench had been Jake's anchor when he'd first returned stateside, when the nightmares were so bad that Jake couldn't sleep more than 2 hours without waking up drenched in sweat. Yeah, I'm on it," Jake muttered, but his mind wasn't on the carburetor. Something had been gnawing at him all morning, an unease he couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the anniversary coming up, 5 years since his buddy Daniel Cooper died in his arms on that dusty road outside Kandahar. Or maybe it was just the heat making him edgy. The bell above the garage door chimed, and Jake looked up to see Amanda Rodriguez, the owner of the Corner Cafe 3 blocks down. She was in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and worry lines that seemed deeper than usual. "Jake, you got a minute?" Her voice carried an urgency that made him set down his tools immediately. "What's wrong, Amanda?" She glanced at Wrench, then back to Jake. "There's a kid at the cafe, been sitting there for 2 hours nursing a glass of water. He's got..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's got a black eye, Jake. A bad one, purple and swollen. His clothes are dirty, and he looks like he hasn't eaten in days. I tried talking to him, but he just clams up. I thought maybe, with your work with the club and everything." Jake's jaw tightened. The Steel Brotherhood wasn't just about riding bikes and working on engines. For the past 3 years, they'd been involved with organizations like Bikers Against Child Abuse, attending court hearings with frightened kids, standing guard outside homes where children were terrorized by abusers. It had started as a way for Jake to give back, to find purpose beyond the garage. It had become his mission. "Let's go," Jake said, already grabbing his leather vest with the Steel Brotherhood patch on the back. Wrench looked up from his work. "Want company?" "Not yet. Let me see what we're dealing with first." The walk to the Corner Cafe took less than 5 minutes, but every step felt heavy with purpose. Smithville was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, which could be both a blessing and a curse. If this kid was hurt, someone had to know something. The cafe was a throwback to the 50s, with red vinyl booths and a black and white checkered floor. A jukebox in the corner played Patsy Cline softly. The lunch rush had ended, leaving only a handful of patrons scattered throughout the space. Jake spotted the boy immediately. He sat in the corner booth, small for what Jake guessed was maybe 7 or 8 years old. Blonde hair that needed cutting fell across his forehead, almost, but not quite, hiding the spectacular bruise that had closed his left eye to a swollen slit. The purple-black coloration spread from his eyebrow to his cheekbone, with hints of yellow around the edges, suggesting this wasn't a fresh injury. The boy wore a faded Superman t-shirt that was 2 sizes too big, and jeans with holes in the knees that didn't look fashionable. They looked worn out, But it was the boy's eyes, or rather his one good eye, that stopped Jake in his tracks. That shade of blue held a wariness that no child should possess, an ancient exhaustion that Jake recognized from his own mirror during the worst days after his return from war. Jake slid into the booth across from him, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible on the table. "Hey there, I'm Jake. What's your name?" The boy didn't answer, just looked at him with that single blue eye, calculating, measuring threat levels. "You hungry? Amanda makes the best cheeseburgers in Texas. I know that's a big claim, but I've been to Houston, Dallas, Austin. Nowhere compares to her burgers." Still nothing, but Jake saw the boy's throat work as he swallowed, and his good eye flicked toward the menu. "Tell you what, I'm gonna order 2 burgers, 2 orders of fries, and 2 chocolate milkshakes. If you don't want yours, I'll eat both. I'm a growing boy." Jake patted his flat stomach, earning the tiniest twitch of the boy's lips. Not quite a smile, but close. Amanda came over, relief evident on her face when she saw Jake had gotten the boy to at least stay seated. "What can I get you, gentlemen?" "2 of your famous cheeseburgers, Amanda. All the fixings. 2 fries, 2 chocolate shakes. And put some extra bacon on there. We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Amanda asked, playing along. "Tuesday, best day of the week." When Amanda walked away, Jake leaned back in the booth, trying to look as non-threatening as a 6'2", 200-pound man with tattooed arms could look. "So, I'm gonna talk, and you can listen. No pressure to say anything back, okay?" The boy gave the slightest nod. "I work at the motorcycle garage down the street, Steel Brotherhood. We fix bikes, ride on weekends, and sometimes we help kids who are in tough spots. I'm not a cop, not a teacher, not anyone who's going to make you do anything you don't want to do, but I am someone who knows what it's like to be scared and hurt and not know who to trust." The boy's eye narrowed slightly, processing. "I was in the army, Afghanistan, 3 tours. Saw some bad things, had some bad things happen to me. When I came back, I didn't trust anybody. Thought I had to handle everything on my own. Thought asking for help made me weak." Jake paused, the memories flickering through his mind like an old film reel. "Turned out, the strongest thing I ever did was admit I needed help." The food arrived, and Jake watched as the boy stared at the burger like it was a mirage that might disappear. "Go ahead," Jake said gently. "It's yours." Small hands reached out, trembling slightly, and grabbed the burger. The first bite was tentative, but the second and third came faster, and Jake had to resist the urge to tell him to slow down. Instead, he ate his own burger, giving the boy the dignity of not being watched like a zoo animal. They ate in silence for several minutes before the boy finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper and hoarse, as if he didn't use it much. "Tyler. My name is Tyler Bennett." "Tyler. That's a good, strong name." Jake took a sip of his milkshake. "You live here in Smithville, Tyler?" A nod. "You go to Smithville Elementary?" Another nod. "That's where Mrs. Patricia Donovan teaches 4th grade, right? She's tough but fair, I hear." "3rd grade," Tyler whispered. "I'm in 3rd grade, Mrs. Helen Fitzgerald's class." 8 years old then, maybe 9. Jake's heart clenched at how small the boy looked, how fragile. "Tyler, I gotta ask you something, and I want you to know that no matter what you tell me, I'm not gonna be mad at you, okay?" The boy's body tensed, his good eye going wide with something like panic. "How'd you get that black eye?" Tyler's gaze dropped to his lap, his small hands twisted together, and when he spoke, the words came out practiced, rehearsed. "I fell, down the stairs. I'm clumsy." Jake had heard those words before, in different voices, different circumstances. The club had taught him to recognize the signs. "Tyler, do you know what my friend Wrench says? He says the best thing about the truth is you don't have to remember it. Lies are hard work. They take up space in your brain that could be used for better things, like homework or video games, or remembering the batting averages of baseball players." Tyler's lip quivered, and for a moment, Jake thought he might break, might tell the truth. But the boy's face hardened, that ancient wariness sliding back into place like armor. "I fell." Jake nodded slowly. He wouldn't push, not yet. Trust took time. "Okay, you fell. But Tyler, if you ever want to tell me the real story, whatever it is, I'll listen. No judgment, just listening." They finished their meal in silence, and Jake paid the bill, leaving Amanda a generous tip and a meaningful look that said, "Call me if he comes back." Outside the cafe, Tyler hesitated on the sidewalk, looking down the street toward the east end of town where the houses got smaller and the yards got messier. "You need a ride home?" Jake asked. Fear flashed across Tyler's face. No, I can walk. It's not far." "Okay, but take this." Jake pulled out a business card from his wallet, Steel Brotherhood Motorcycle Club, with the garage address and his cell phone number. "You ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call that number. Day or night, someone will answer, that's a promise." Tyler took the card with those small, trembling hands and stuffed it into his jeans pocket. He turned to walk away, but after a few steps, he stopped and looked back at Jake. "Thank you for the burger." "Anytime, Tyler. You're always welcome." Jake watched the boy walk away, his small figure disappearing down the dusty street, and felt the familiar fire ignite in his chest. The same fire that had kept him alive in Afghanistan. The same fire that had driven him to create the Steel Brotherhood. The same fire that now told him this wasn't over. He pulled out his phone and called Wrench. "We got a situation. Kid named Tyler Bennett, about 8 years old, black eye that's at least a few days old, scared out of his mind. I need you to find out everything you can about his family." "On it," Wrench replied without hesitation. Jake stood on that sidewalk for a long time after Tyler disappeared from view, the Texas sun burning the back of his neck, and made a silent promise to a boy he'd just met. "I won't let you down." By Wednesday morning, Wrench had gathered enough information to paint a grim picture. They sat in the garage's back office, a cluttered space with filing cabinets, a coffee maker that had seen better days, and walls covered in motorcycle rally posters and photos of the club's charity events. Tyler Bennett, 8 years old, 3rd grade at Smithville Elementary. Wrench read from his laptop screen, his reading glasses perched on his nose, making him look more like a college professor than a biker. Parents were Christina and Robert Bennett. Died 2 years ago in a car accident on I-10. Drunk driver crossed the median. Tyler was in the car, but survived with minor injuries. Jake's hands clenched into fists. Who's he living with? Uncle. Derek Bennett, age 34, younger brother of Robert Bennett. Works sporadically as a construction laborer, but from what I can dig up from county records, he's been unemployed more than employed in the past 2 years. Got a record, 2 DUIs, 1 assault charge that was dropped, and 1 domestic disturbance call that didn't result in charges. Domestic disturbance against Tyler? Report doesn't specify. Neighbor called it in about 6 months ago, said there was yelling and crashing sounds. Cops showed up, Derek said everything was fine. They looked around and left. Jake felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth ached. What about CPS? Texas Child Protective Services have any involvement? Wrench shook his head. Not officially. No open cases on Tyler Bennett in the system. If the school has reported anything, it hasn't resulted in an investigation yet. Yet, Jake repeated. What about other family? Grandparents, aunts, anyone? Mother's parents died before Tyler was born. Father's mother is in a nursing home in San Antonio with advanced Alzheimer's. Derek's the only family listed as guardian. The bell above the garage door chimed, and both men looked up to see George Bull Patterson entering. Bull was 62, built like his nickname suggested, with a gray beard that reached mid-chest and eyes that could intimidate a grizzly bear. He was also the gentlest man Jake had ever met, a grandfather of 6 who volunteered at the local library reading to kids every Saturday. Heard we got a situation. Bull rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. Word traveled fast in the Steel Brotherhood. That was by design. When a child needed help, every member needed to know. Jake filled Bull in on what they'd learned about Tyler. Bull's expression darkened. Derek Bennett. Yeah, I know him. He drinks at Murphy's bar most nights. Loud drunk, angry drunk, always complaining about how his life got ruined when he had to take in his nephew. The anger that flared in Jake's chest was white hot. He says that? In public? To anyone who'll listen. Says the kid's a burden, that he never wanted kids, that Tyler's the reason he can't get his life together. Bull's massive hands clenched. I've had to walk away from him more than once before I did something I'd regret. Jake stood and paced the small office. Every instinct screamed at him to drive to Derek Bennett's house and settle this the old-fashioned way. But that wouldn't help Tyler. It would just put Jake in jail and leave the boy in an even worse situation. We need to document everything, Jake said finally, forcing himself to think strategically. Every bruise, every time he shows up hungry or dirty, we need to build a case that CPS can't ignore. I'll talk to my daughter-in-law, Bull offered. She works at the elementary school as a counselor, Stephanie Patterson Green. She'll know if teachers have noticed anything. The next few days fell into a pattern. Tyler showed up at the corner cafe every afternoon after school, sitting in the same corner booth. Jake made sure he was there, buying the boy food, talking about safe topics, motorcycles, baseball, the weather. Slowly, painfully slowly, Tyler began to open up. Do you got kids? Tyler asked on Thursday, working his way through a grilled cheese sandwich. No. Never been married. Never had kids of my own. Why not? Jake considered how to answer that. I guess I was always waiting to be ready. Kept thinking I needed to have everything figured out first. Good job, stable life, house with a yard. Then I went to war, and when I came back, I felt too broken to be someone's dad. Tyler looked at him with those old eyes. You don't seem broken. Thanks, buddy. I had a lot of help putting the pieces back together. That's what the Steel Brotherhood is. People who help each other heal. Are they all like you? Veterans? Most of us. Some are just folks who love motorcycles and wanted to be part of something good. We do charity rides, raise money for kids in foster care, and sometimes we help kids who are in bad situations. Tyler went very still. What kind of bad situations? Jake met the boy's gaze steadily. Kids who are being hurt by people who are supposed to take care of them. Kids who need someone to stand between them and the bad stuff. The silence stretched between them like a rubber band pulled taut. Tyler's throat worked as he swallowed hard, and his good eye, the bruising had faded to a yellowish green but still looked painful, filled with something that might have been hope or might have been fear. Maybe both. Tyler's voice cracked. He tried again. Can kids just ask for help, even if they're scared? Jake leaned forward, keeping his voice gentle but firm. Absolutely. That's actually the bravest thing a kid can do. Asking for help doesn't make you weak, Tyler. It makes you smart. The boy nodded but didn't elaborate. Jake didn't push. Building trust was like building a motorcycle engine. Force anything and you'd strip the threads. Patience was everything. On Friday afternoon, Jake's phone rang while he was replacing brake pads on a Road King. The screen showed Bull's daughter-in-law's number. Jake Sullivan, he answered, pressing the phone between his ear and shoulder. Mr. Sullivan, this is Stephanie Patterson Green from Smithville Elementary. Bull suggested I call you about Tyler Bennett. Jake immediately set down his tools and gave her his full attention. What's going on? I've been pulling Tyler's records and talking to his teacher, Helen Fitzgerald. She's been documenting concerns for the past 6 months. Tyler comes to school hungry most days. His clothes are often dirty or inappropriate for the weather. He falls asleep in class regularly. And there have been 3 visible injuries in the past 4 months. The black eye you saw, a burn on his forearm that Tyler said came from touching a hot stove, and bruising on his upper arms consistent with being grabbed forcefully. Jake's free hand clenched into a fist. Has the school reported this to CPS? There was a pause. Yes. Mrs. Fitzgerald filed a report in September after the burn incident. CPS sent someone to do a home visit. Derek Bennett was apparently cooperative. The house was clean during the visit, and Tyler told the caseworker everything was fine. Without the child confirming abuse and with no immediate danger evident, they closed the investigation. He was coached, Jake said flatly. Derek told him what to say. That's my assessment as well. But unfortunately, CPS has limited resources and an overwhelming caseload. Unless there's clear evidence or the child discloses abuse, their hands are tied. Stephanie's voice carried the frustration of someone who'd fought this battle before. But Jake, I'm calling because Tyler did something unusual today. He asked me if he could keep a picture he drew in art class. Usually kids want to take their art home, but Tyler specifically asked if it could stay in my office. What was in the picture? A man on a motorcycle. Big, detailed, clearly drawn with care. And in the corner, he wrote, "My friend Jake." Something warm and painful expanded in Jake's chest. Can you keep an eye on him? Let me know if anything changes? Absolutely. And Jake, Bull told me what you're doing. Thank you. Kids like Tyler need people like you. After he hung up, Jake sat in the quiet garage for a long moment. Through the open bay door, he could see Smithville's main street, the cafe, the hardware store, the library, all the ordinary places that made up an ordinary town. Somewhere in this town, a little boy was being hurt, and the systems designed to protect him were failing. But Jake wasn't a system. He was a man who'd learned in the worst possible circumstances that sometimes one person choosing to act could change everything. He called Wrench and Bull, along with 3 other core members of Steel Brotherhood. Rachel Spike Morrison, Wrench's daughter, a paralegal who specialized in family law. Thomas Doc Henderson, a retired Army medic who now worked at Smithville Medical Center. And Jennifer Jinx Walsh, a social worker who joined the club after her own son had been helped by BACA members in Dallas. They met that evening at the garage, sitting in a circle on various chairs and overturned crates, the overhead fluorescent lights humming softly. So here's where we are, Jake began, laying out everything they knew about Tyler's situation. We have a kid who's clearly being abused, a system that's already looked the other way once, and an uncle who's gotten very good at covering his tracks. Rachel leaned forward, her sharp features intense. She was 34, with her father's eyes and her mother's determination. What we need is documentation, photos of injuries, statements from teachers, medical records if possible. We need to build such an overwhelming case that CPS can't ignore it. And we need Tyler to feel safe enough to tell the truth, Jinx added. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor honed by 20 years in social work. Abused kids protect their abusers for lots of reasons. Fear, misplaced loyalty, belief that they deserve the abuse. We need to show Tyler that there's a safe alternative. I'll reach out to my contacts at CPS, Doc said. His real name was Thomas, but everyone called him Doc, a holdover from his army days. At 58, he still carried himself with military precision. See if I can get someone to take a fresh look at Tyler's case, maybe flag it for priority review. Jake nodded, grateful for his team. This was what Steel Brotherhood was about, veterans and good people using their skills, connections, and sheer stubborn determination to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. There's one more thing, Jake said. I want to be there for Tyler, not just as some guy who buys him lunch. I want him to know he has someone he can count on, someone who won't abandon him. Bull's deep voice rumbled through the garage. You think in foster care? Adoption? I don't know yet. One step at a time. First, we get him safe, then we figure out the rest. That night, Jake lay in his small apartment above the garage, staring at the ceiling. The fan rotated slowly, doing little to cut through the late October heat. His mind kept circling back to Tyler, those ancient eyes in that young face, the way he'd flinched when Jake had reached across the table for the ketchup, the carefully practiced lies about falling downstairs. Jake had seen war. He'd held dying friends and faced enemy fire. He'd thought he'd seen the worst that humans could do to each other. But there was something particularly evil about hurting a child, about taking someone small and vulnerable and using them as a target for your own rage and inadequacy. Derek Bennett was creating wounds in Tyler that might never fully heal. Wounds that Jake recognized because he carried similar scars from different battles. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "Can I call you?" Tyler Jake sat up immediately and dialed the number. Tyler answered on the first ring, his voice barely audible. "Jake? Hey, buddy. What's wrong? Are you okay?" There was breathing on the other end, ragged and scared. In the background, Jake heard the unmistakable sound of adult male voices raised in anger, bottles clinking, rough laughter. "I'm scared," Tyler whispered. "Uncle Derek has friends over. They're drinking. He gets mean when he drinks with them." Jake was already pulling on his jeans, grabbing his keys. "Tyler, where are you right now?" "In my room. Door's locked." "That's good. That's real good. You stay there. Keep the door locked. I'm coming, okay? 20 minutes. Can you stay safe for 20 minutes? "I think so." "Tyler, if your uncle tries to get in, if anything happens, you call 911. Promise me." "I promise." "And Tyler, you did the right thing calling me. I'm proud of you." Jake hung up and called Wrench as he thundered down the stairs from his apartment. "I need backup. Tyler's in trouble. Derek Bennett's place. And I'm going now." "On my way." "Jake, don't do anything stupid." "Define stupid," Jake muttered, already swinging his leg over his Harley-Davidson Softail. The engine roared to life, cutting through the quiet Texas night. Derek Bennett's house was on the south side of town, a small ranch-style home with peeling paint and a yard full of dead grass and empty beer cans. 3 pickup trucks were parked haphazardly in the driveway and on the lawn. Light spilled from the windows, and Jake could hear music and male voices even from the street. He parked his bike at the curb and approached the house, his boots crunching on the gravel driveway. Every instinct trained into him during his army years was firing. Assess the threat, plan your approach, keep your six clear. But this wasn't Afghanistan. This was Texas, and there were laws about what he could and couldn't do. The front door was open, just the screen door closed. Through it, Jake could see 4 men in the living room, surrounded by beer bottles and what looked like a poker game. Derek Bennett was easy to identify. He looked like an unhealthier version of the man from his driver's license photo that Wrench had pulled up. Thin, unshaven, with the yellowed skin and bloodshot eyes of a dedicated drinker. Jake knocked on the doorframe, hard enough to be heard over the music. Derek looked up, his expression going from confusion to hostility in a heartbeat. "Who the hell are you?" "Jake Sullivan. I'm a friend of Tyler's. He called me, said he was scared." Derek's face flushed red. He stood, swaying slightly, and walked to the door. "Tyler called you? That little shit, he's fine. He's in his room where he's supposed to be." "I'd like to see that for myself, if you don't mind." "I do mind. Get off my property before I call the cops." Behind Derek, his friends were watching with the interest of men looking for entertainment. One of them, a burly guy with a Confederate flag tattoo on his forearm, laughed. "Derek's got himself a social worker. Ain't that sweet?" Jake's hands clenched, but he kept his voice level. "I'm not a social worker. I'm just someone making sure a kid is safe. Tyler, you okay in there?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, faintly, from somewhere in the back of the house, "I'm okay." The relief that flooded through Jake was physical. The boy was alive, could answer. That was something. "See, he's fine." Now get lost before this gets ugly." Derek started to close the door, but Jake's hand shot out, holding it open. "If anything happens to that boy, anything, there's gonna be a lot of people asking questions. You understand me?" Derek's eyes narrowed. "You threatening me?" "I'm making a promise. Tyler's got people watching out for him now. You lay one more hand on him, and you'll answer for it." The sound of motorcycle engines approaching made everyone freeze. Wrench, Bull, and Doc pulled up on their bikes, the rumble of their engines like thunder. They didn't get off their motorcycles, just sat there, engines idling, their presence a clear message. Derek looked from Jake to the bikers and back again. Something like fear flickered across his face before anger reasserted itself. "You can't prove anything. That kid's a liar and a klutz. Anything happens to him, it's his own fault." "We'll see about that," Jake said quietly. He turned and walked back to his bike, his heart pounding with adrenaline and rage. Wrench pulled up beside him. "We following you back?" "No. I need someone watching this house tonight. Rotating shifts. If Derek leaves, if there's any sign of trouble, we call the cops." Bull nodded. "I'll take first watch. Doc can relieve me at 2, then Wrench at 6. They were breaking no laws. It was a public street. They could park wherever they wanted. But the message was clear. Tyler Bennett wasn't alone anymore. Jake called Tyler's number. The boy answered immediately. "Jake, are you still here?" "I'm outside. So are some friends of mine. We're gonna make sure you're safe tonight, okay? If anything happens, you call 911 first, then me. Can you do that?" "Yes." Tyler's voice was stronger now, less frightened. "Thank you. Get some sleep if you can, buddy. Tomorrow's Saturday. You think your uncle would let you come by the garage? We're having a club meeting, gonna work on some bikes, order pizza." There was a pause. "Maybe. If he's sleeping off his hangover, I can probably sneak out." The fact that an 8-year-old had to sneak out to spend time with people who actually cared about him made Jake want to put his fist through something. "Okay, you come by if you can, but Tyler, stay safe. That's the #1 priority." "I will." "Jake? Yeah? Why are you helping me?" The question hung in the air between them. Jake looked up at Derek Bennett's house, thought about all the kids he'd seen in similar situations, thought about the boy he'd been once. Not abused like Tyler, but lost and scared in his own way after his own father had died when Jake was 12. "Because everybody deserves someone in their corner, Tyler, and you're in mine now." After Tyler hung up, Jake sat on his bike for a long time, watching Bull settle in for the night watch, thinking about a little boy with a black eye and a practiced lie about falling downstairs. This was just the beginning. Jake knew that. Getting Tyler safe, getting him away from Derek permanently, that would be a long fight involving lawyers, court hearings, and a system that was already overwhelmed. But Jake had fought long battles before. And he'd learned something important in Afghanistan. Sometimes the fight worth having is the one where retreat isn't an option. Tyler Bennett needed a champion. And whether Derek Bennett liked it or not, he'd just found one. Tyler showed up at the Steel Brotherhood garage at 10 o'clock Saturday morning, slipping through the open bay door like a shadow. Jake spotted him immediately and felt his chest tighten at the sight of the boy, wearing the same worn Superman shirt, jeans with fresh dirt on the knees, and an expression that mixed hope with fear. "Hey, buddy, you made it." Jake set down the socket wrench he'd been using and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Come on in, we're just getting started." The garage was a hive of activity. Wrench was working on a carburetor rebuild, Doc was organizing tools, and Bull was examining a custom paint job on a diner-wide glide. Rachel had brought her laptop to work on some legal research, and Jinx was setting up a folding table for the pizza that would arrive around noon. All activity stopped when Tyler entered. The boy froze, suddenly confronted with 6 large adults all wearing Steel Brotherhood vests, all staring at him. Jake quickly crossed to Tyler's side, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Tyler, these are my friends. This is Wrench. He taught me everything I know about engines. That's Bull. He's scary looking, but he's actually a big teddy bear. Doc over there used to be a medic in the army. Rachel's the smartest person you'll ever meet. She's a lawyer, and Jinx has been helping kids even longer than I have. Each person waved or nodded as they were introduced, their expressions carefully neutral and non-threatening. They understood, without Jake having to explain, that Tyler was like a wounded animal. One sudden movement, one wrong word, and he'd bolt. "Hi, Tyler," Jinx said warmly. "Jake's told us about you. He says you're interested in motorcycles." Tyler nodded hesitantly. "Well, you came to the right place. We've got 7 bikes in here right now, each one different. You want to see them?" Something flickered in Tyler's eye. Interest fighting with caution. Interest won. Okay. For the next hour, Jake and the others gave Tyler a tour of every motorcycle in the garage. They explained the differences between Softails and Dynas, showed him how to check oil levels, let him sit on Wrench's personal bike, a pristine 1996 Heritage Softail, and make engine sounds. Slowly, carefully, the boy began to relax. "Can I ask you something?" Tyler said, as Jake showed him how a carburetor worked. "Anything. Why do you all ride motorcycles? Aren't they dangerous?" Jake considered the question seriously. "They can be if you're not careful. But for a lot of us, riding is about freedom. When you're on a bike, especially on a long stretch of open road, it's just you and the machine and the world around you. All the noise in your head gets quiet. All the problems seem smaller. It's peaceful. I want to feel peaceful," Tyler said quietly. Jake's throat tightened. "I know you do, buddy," Bull approached, holding 2 bottles of Coke. "Tyler, you ever play checkers?" The boy shook his head. "Well, we gotta fix that. Come on, I'll teach you." Tyler glanced at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. "Go ahead. Bull's a terrible checkers player. You'll probably beat him on your first try." "I heard that," Bull grumbled, but his eyes twinkled. He led Tyler to a corner of the garage where a small table held a worn checkerboard. Rachel sidled up to Jake, her voice low. "He's a sweet kid, and he trusts you, that's clear." "I know, that's what scares me. What if I can't help him? What if we go through all this and he ends up back with Derek anyway?" "Then we keep fighting," Rachel said firmly. "Jake, I pulled the case files from Tyler's CPS investigation. The caseworker who did the home visit did the bare minimum. Spent 30 minutes at the house, asked Tyler a few questions in front of his uncle, noted that the house was clean and there was food in the fridge. She never interviewed teachers, never checked medical records, never did a follow-up visit." Jake's jaw clenched. "Can we request a new investigation?" "We can, but we need something that will force them to take it seriously. A new injury, a clear disclosure from Tyler, medical evidence, something they can't ignore." "So we keep watching, keep documenting." "Exactly. And Jake," Rachel hesitated, "I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. If we get Tyler out of Derek's custody, what happens next? Foster care. You mentioned wanting to be there for him. Are you thinking about becoming his foster parent, maybe even adopting him?" The question hung between them like smoke. Jake had been avoiding thinking that far ahead, focusing on the immediate crisis. But Rachel was right, he needed a plan. "I don't know if I'd qualify as a foster parent. I'm single. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment above a garage. I have PTSD from my service. I'm not exactly the ideal candidate. But you care about him. That counts for a lot." Rachel pulled out her phone and scrolled through some notes. "I've been researching Texas foster care and adoption requirements. Single men can absolutely be foster parents and adopt. You'd need to go through a home study, background checks, training. The PTSD might be a consideration, but if you're in treatment and managing it well, it shouldn't disqualify you. The apartment is an issue. You'd need a separate bedroom for Tyler. But those are all solvable problems, Jake." Jake looked across the garage to where Tyler was studying the checkerboard. his small face scrunched in concentration as Bull explained the rules. The boy looked not happy exactly, but engaged, present, not wearing that terrible wariness like armor. "I'll think about it," Jake said finally. "First things first, get him safe. Then we figure out the rest." The pizza arrived around noon, and they all sat around the garage eating and talking. Tyler was quiet but attentive, soaking in the easy camaraderie of the group. No one raised their voice, no one got angry, no one made fun of him when he spilled soda on his shirt. "So Tyler," Doc said, wiping pizza grease from his fingers, "what's your favorite subject in school?" "Reading," Tyler said immediately. "I like stories about knights and dragons and heroes." "Heroes, huh?" Bull leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "What makes someone a hero, you think?" Tyler thought about it seriously. "Someone who saves people. Someone who's brave, even when they're scared." "That's a good answer," Jink said. "I think heroes are also people who do the right thing even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching or giving them credit." Tyler looked at Jake. "Like you." The garage went quiet. Jake felt every eye turn to him, and he fought the urge to deflect, to make a joke. Instead, he met Tyler's gaze steadily. "Tyler, I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who thinks kids should be safe and happy. But I'll tell you what, you're pretty brave yourself. It takes guts to call someone when you're scared. It takes guts to accept help." Tyler's expression crumpled slightly, and for a terrible moment, Jake thought he might cry. But the boy swallowed hard and nodded. They spent the afternoon working on bikes, playing checkers. Tyler beat Bull on his third game, much to Bull's exaggerated dismay, and just existing in a space where an 8-year-old boy could be a child instead of a punching bag. Around 4 o'clock, Tyler's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, a cheap prepaid model that looked like it had been run over a few times, and his face went pale. "My uncle, he's awake. He's texting that I need to come home now." The atmosphere in the garage shifted instantly. Every adult there knew what "come home now" meant for Tyler. Jake forced himself to stay calm. "Okay, do you want me to drive you?" Terror flashed across Tyler's face. No, if he sees you, he'll be so mad. I can walk. It's okay." "Tyler, please, Jake. It'll be worse if you come." The helplessness Jake felt in that moment was almost overwhelming. He wanted to grab Tyler, put him on his bike, and drive far away where Derek Bennett could never hurt him again. But that would be kidnapping. That would make Jake the criminal and do nothing to help Tyler in the long run. "Okay," Jake said, his voice rough. "But Tyler, you have my number. Anything happens, anything, you call me, and keep your door locked tonight." Tyler nodded and headed for the garage door, but he stopped at the threshold and turned back. His one good eye was bright with unshed tears. "Can I come back tomorrow?" "Tomorrow's Sunday," Jake said. "We're not working on bikes, but if you want, we could meet at the park. There's one on Maple Street with the good swings. Around noon." "Okay." Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. Then, so quietly, Jake almost missed it. "I wish you were my dad." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Before he could respond, Tyler ran out the door, his small figure disappearing down the street in the late afternoon sun. The silence in the garage was deafening. Rachel was the first to speak, her voice thick with emotion. "Jake, we have to do something. We can't just send him back there." "I know." Jake's hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists. "Doc, call your contact at CPS. Tonight. I don't care if it's the weekend. Tell them we have a child in immediate danger and we need intervention." Doc nodded and pulled out his phone, stepping outside to make the call. Wrench approached Jake, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "No, not even a little bit." Jake ran his hands through his hair, fighting the urge to punch something. "I wish you were my dad. How am I supposed to sit here knowing he's with that monster and there's nothing I can do?" We're doing something, Wrench said firmly. We're building a case. We're being Tyler's advocates. And Jake, that kid already sees you as his father. The paperwork is just details. Doc came back inside, his expression grim. I talked to Linda Morrison at CPS. She's a supervisor, someone I trust. She's going to personally review Tyler's case first thing Monday morning and send a caseworker out for an unannounced home visit. It's the best I can do for now. Monday, Jake repeated. That's 48 hours away. Anything could happen in 48 hours. Which is why we're going to keep watch on that house, Bull said. Same as last night, rotating shifts. The moment something looks wrong, we call the police. It was the best plan they had, but it felt desperately inadequate. That night, Jake took the midnight to 6 shift, parking his bike down the street from Derek Bennett's house and watching the darkened windows. He thought about Tyler in there, hopefully asleep, hopefully safe. He thought about the boy's words, "I wish you were my dad." Jake had never wanted kids. After Afghanistan, he'd barely felt equipped to take care of himself, let alone be responsible for another human being. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the moments when loud noises sent him diving for cover, those weren't the qualities of a good parent. But sitting there in the Texas darkness, watching over a house where a child was in danger, Jake realized something. Maybe being a good parent wasn't about being perfect. Maybe it was about showing up, about caring enough to stand between a kid and the world's cruelty, about making a child feel safe and valued and loved. He pulled out his phone and texted Rachel, "How do I start the foster parent process?" Her response came minutes later, "I'll send you the information tomorrow." "Are you sure?" Jake looked at Derek Bennett's house, thought about Tyler's black eye and too thin frame and ancient wariness. He thought about the boy's smile when he'd won at checkers, the way his eyes had lit up when sitting on Wrench's motorcycle, the quiet hope in his voice when he'd asked if he could come back. "I'm sure," Jake typed. "Whatever it takes." Sunday dawned clear and hot, the kind of day where the Texas sun felt personal in its intensity. Jake got to the Maple Street Park at 11:30, wanting to be there early. The park was a pleasant space with aging but well-maintained equipment, swings, a slide, monkey bars, and a merry-go-round that probably violated every modern safety regulation, but had been there for 30 years. A few families were scattered around, parents watching toddlers, older kids playing pickup basketball on the court. Normal, happy, safe. Tyler arrived at exactly noon, walking down the street with his hands in his pockets. As he got closer, Jake's heart sank. There was a fresh bruise on Tyler's jaw, a purple-yellow mark that hadn't been there yesterday. "Hey, buddy," Jake said, keeping his voice neutral despite the rage burning in his chest. "How are you doing?" "Okay." Tyler wouldn't meet his eyes. "Tyler, what happened to your face?" The boy's hand went to his jaw instinctively. "I walked into a door. I wasn't paying attention." The lie was delivered in that same flat, practiced voice. Jake wanted to scream. Instead, he took a breath and crouched down to Tyler's level. "Tyler, I need to take a picture of that bruise. Is that okay?" Fear flashed across the boy's face. "Why?" "Because I'm building a record. I'm going to make sure someone official sees what's happening to you, but I need your permission to take the photo." Tyler was silent for a long moment, his gaze darting around the park as if checking for spies. Finally, he nodded. Jake pulled out his phone and carefully photographed the bruise from multiple angles, noting the time and date. Then he texted the photos to Rachel with a brief explanation. "Okay, want to swing?" They spent the next hour at the park, swinging and talking about nothing important. Favorite foods, TV shows, what superpower would be the best. Tyler seemed to relax incrementally, the tension bleeding out of his thin shoulders. "Jake," Tyler said as they sat on the swings, moving back and forth lazily, "why doesn't anybody stop him?" There was no need to clarify who him was. Jake chose his words carefully. The system that's supposed to protect kids, Child Protective Services, they're overwhelmed. Too many kids, not enough workers. Sometimes things fall through the cracks. It's not right, but it's the reality. So nobody cares. No, Tyler, that's not true. I care. The Steel Brotherhood cares. Your teacher, Mrs. Fitzgerald, she cares. She's the one who reported the burn on your arm to CPS. There are people fighting for you. It just takes time to get everything in place. Tyler's swing slowed to a stop. What if there isn't time? The question was so adult, so weary, that it broke Jake's heart. Then we make time. Tyler, tomorrow morning, someone from CPS is coming to your uncle's house unannounced. A supervisor named Linda Morrison. She's going to want to talk to you alone, without your uncle there. This is your chance to tell the truth, all of it. He'll hurt me worse if I tell. Not if you're not living there anymore. Tyler, if you tell Ms. Morrison the truth, she can remove you from that house immediately. You'll go to a foster home, somewhere safe, while everything gets sorted out. Hope and terror warred on Tyler's face. But what if the foster home is bad too? I heard stories at school about foster kids who get bounced around, who get hurt. Jake had heard those stories too. The system wasn't perfect, but it had to be better than Derek Bennett's house. I can't promise everything will be perfect, Jake said honestly, but I can promise I'll be there every step of the way. I'm starting the process to become a certified foster parent. If you go into foster care, I'm going to fight to be your placement. And if I can't be, I'll make sure whoever is taking care of you knows that you have people watching out for you. Tyler looked at him with those old eyes. You'd really do that? Become a foster parent for me? Yes. Why? It was the second time Tyler had asked him that. Jake thought about all the complicated reasons, his need for purpose after the war, his desire to make something good come from all the darkness he'd seen, his recognition of a kindred wounded soul. But when he answered, it was with simple truth. Because you matter, Tyler. You deserve to be safe and happy, and because I think maybe we need each other. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, and suddenly he was off the swing and throwing his arms around Jake's waist, holding on like a drowning person clutching a life preserver. Jake wrapped his arms around the small, trembling body and held on just as tightly. I'm scared, Tyler whispered into Jake's shirt. I know, but you're also brave, and you're not alone. They stayed like that for a long time, man and boy, holding each other up in a sun-drenched Texas park while the world moved on around them. When Tyler finally pulled back, he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Okay. Tomorrow, when the lady comes, I'll tell her everything. But Jake, will you be there? If they'll let me, absolutely. And if not, I'll be right outside waiting for you. Tyler nodded, his jaw set with determination that looked simultaneously heartbreaking and inspiring on his young face. They spent another hour at the park before Tyler said he needed to get home before his uncle got suspicious about where he'd been. Jake watched him walk away, that small figure carrying burdens no child should have to bear, and made a silent vow. One more night, Tyler. Just survive one more night, and then everything changes. Monday morning arrived with the weight of a promise. Jake had barely slept, his mind running through every possible scenario for how the day might unfold. At 7 a.m., he got a text from Doc. Linda Morrison is heading to Derek's house at 9 a.m. Unannounced visit. She knows the situation. Jake immediately called Rachel. What are Tyler's rights during a CPS interview? They'll want Jake immediately called Rachel. What are Tyler's rights during a CPS interview? They'll want to speak with him alone, away from Derek. Standard protocol is to separate the child from the alleged abuser to get honest answers. Linda's experienced. She'll know how to make Tyler feel safe enough to talk. But Jake, Rachel paused. You can't be there during the interview. It could be seen as coaching or undue influence, but I promised him I'd be there. You can be nearby, outside the house, waiting, but you have to let Linda do her job. Jake paced his apartment, every nerve on fire. The waiting was torture. At 8:30, he texted Tyler, "CPS is coming this morning. Remember what we talked about. Tell the truth. I'll be close by." The response came quickly. "I'm scared." "I know, but you're brave. You can do this. I believe in you." At 8:45, Jake rode his bike to Derek Bennett's neighborhood and parked 2 blocks away where he could see the house but wouldn't be immediately obvious. Wrench, Bull, and Doc joined him within minutes, their bikes lined up like a wall of chrome and leather. "We're here for moral support," Bull rumbled, "and to make sure nothing goes sideways." At precisely 9 o'clock, a white sedan pulled up in front of Derek's house. A woman in her 50s stepped out, carrying a briefcase and clipboard. Linda Morrison. She walked up to the front door with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Through his position down the street, Jake couldn't hear what was said when Derek answered the door, but he could see body language. Derek's posture was defensive, arms crossed. Linda was calm, authoritative. After a brief exchange, she disappeared into the house. "Now we wait," Wrench said quietly. 45 minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Jake's hands clenched and unclenched on his handlebars. His mind conjured 100 terrible scenarios. Derek intimidating Tyler into silence. Tyler, too, scared to speak up. Linda dismissing the evidence as inconclusive. Then the front door opened. Linda emerged first, her expression professionally neutral. Behind her came Tyler, carrying a small backpack, and behind them, Derek, his face purple with rage. "You can't do this," Derek's voice carried down the street. "That's my nephew. You can't just take him." Linda's response was too quiet to hear, but her posture was firm. She placed a hand on Tyler's shoulder and guided him toward her car. Derek took a step forward, and Jake was off his bike instantly, striding down the street. Wrench, Bull, and Doc followed, their presence a clear message. Derek saw them coming and froze. Linda noticed too, and her eyes narrowed with recognition. She'd clearly been briefed about the Steel Brotherhood's involvement. "Mr. Sullivan," she said calmly, "I'm placing Tyler in emergency protective custody. He'll be transported to a temporary foster placement while we complete our investigation." Tyler's eyes found Jake's, and the relief there was palpable. The boy's lips moved. "I told her everything." Pride and pain warred in Jake's chest. "Where are you taking him?" "I can't disclose that information to non-family members. I'm starting the foster certification process. I want to be considered for his placement." Linda's expression softened slightly. "I'm aware. Rachel Morrison contacted me yesterday with your information. We'll need to complete your home study and background check before you can be approved. In the meantime, Tyler will be in a licensed foster home." "Can I talk to him just for a minute?" Linda looked at Tyler, who nodded eagerly. Briefly. Jake crouched down in front of Tyler, not caring that they were in the middle of the street with Derek glaring daggers at them. "Hey, buddy, you did it. You were so brave." "I was scared," Tyler whispered. "Brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared. I'm so proud of you." Jake glanced at Linda, then back to Tyler. "I can't be with you right now, but I'm going to do everything I can to change that. In the meantime, you're going to stay with a family who knows how to take care of kids. And Tyler, you have my number. You can call me any time. Will I see you again?" "Absolutely. As soon as they'll let me, I'll visit. I promise." Tyler threw his arms around Jake's neck, holding tight. "Thank you for saving me." Jake's eyes burned with unshed tears. "You saved yourself, Tyler. You found the courage to ask for help. That's all you." Linda gently touched Tyler's shoulder. "We need to go, sweethearts." Tyler pulled back and climbed into the sedan. As Linda pulled away from the curb, Jake watched the car disappear down the street, carrying a little boy toward an uncertain but infinitely safer future. Derek's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "This isn't over. That kid's a liar. I'll get him back and you'll all pay for this." Jake turned slowly to face Derek Bennett. Every instinct screamed at him to throw a punch, to make this man hurt the way he'd hurt Tyler. But that would accomplish nothing except landing Jake in jail. Bull stepped forward, his massive frame blocking Derek's view of Jake. "Mr. Bennett, I'd suggest you get yourself a lawyer and stay far away from Tyler. Because if you try to contact that boy, if you make any threats, if you do anything except cooperate fully with CPS, you'll be dealing with charges. And trust me, with the documentation we've collected, those charges will stick." Derek sneered. "Who the hell are you?" "We're the Steel Brotherhood, and we protect kids. Remember that." Derek's bravado faltered. He retreated into his house, slamming the door behind him. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "It's done. Tyler's safe." "First battle won," Wrench said. "Now comes the war, keeping him safe permanently." Over the next 2 weeks, Jake threw himself into the foster parent certification process with the intensity he'd once reserved for military operations. He attended the required training sessions, submitted to background checks, and scheduled a home study. The caseworker who conducted the study, a kind woman named Patricia Wells, was honest about the challenges. "Your apartment is too small," she said, looking around the one-bedroom space. "Texas requires foster children to have their own bedroom. You'd need to find a larger place." "I'm looking at rentals," Jake said. He'd already identified 3 possibilities: small houses, with 2 bedrooms in decent neighborhoods, all within his budget if he was careful. "Your PTSD diagnosis will require additional documentation," Patricia continued. "We'll need letters from your therapist confirming you're in treatment and that your condition doesn't pose a risk to a child." "I can get those." Patricia smiled. "Mr. Sullivan, I have to say, in 15 years of doing this job, I rarely see single men pursuing foster certification, especially for a specific child. Why is Tyler so important to you?" Jake thought about how to answer that. "I spent 3 tours in Afghanistan, seeing the worst of what humans can do to each other. When I came home, I felt broken and useless. The Steel Brotherhood gave me purpose, helping kids who couldn't help themselves. Tyler, he's not just another case. He's a reminder that sometimes one person showing up can make all the difference. He needs someone, and I need to be that someone." Patricia made notes on her clipboard. "I'm going to recommend you for expedited approval. It typically takes 3 to 6 months for full certification, but given the circumstances and Tyler's expressed preference to be placed with you, we can fast-track parts of the process. If you secure appropriate housing and complete the remaining training modules within the next month, we could potentially have you certified within 60 days. 60 days. It seemed both impossibly long and miraculously short. Jake found a rental house the following week, a modest 2-bedroom with a small yard on Oakwood Street, just 10 minutes from his garage. It needed work, but it was clean and safe. He signed the lease immediately and spent every evening painting Tyler's future bedroom a cheerful blue, assembling a bed frame he'd bought second-hand, and stocking the closet with clothes in Tyler's size. Rachel helped him navigate the legal complexities. Derek has 30 days to request a hearing to contest the removal. My sources say he's hired a lawyer, which means he's serious about trying to get Tyler back. The thought made Jake's blood run cold. On what grounds? The kid had fresh bruises. He disclosed physical abuse to Linda Morrison. Derek's claiming the bruises were from Tyler being clumsy and that Tyler was coached by you to lie. It's a standard defense in these cases. Deny, minimize, and blame the child or the people trying to help. That's insane. It's also hard to disprove without significant evidence. That's why the documentation we collected is so important. Medical records, Teacher statements, photographs, Tyler's disclosure, all of it builds a case that's harder for Derek to refute. Jake ran his hands through his hair. When's the hearing? Scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Tyler will likely have to testify, which is going to be traumatic for him. But the judge needs to hear directly from him about what happened. Meanwhile, Tyler was placed with the Henderson family, experienced foster parents with 3 other foster children in their home. Linda Morrison arranged for Jake to have supervised visitation twice a week at the CPS office, 30 minutes per visit. The first visit nearly broke Jake's heart. Tyler was waiting in the visitation room when Jake arrived, and the boy's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. He ran across the room and crashed into Jake's arms. "I missed you so much," Tyler said, his voice muffled against Jake's chest. "I missed you too, buddy. How are you doing? Are the Hendersons treating you okay?" Tyler nodded. "They're nice. There's a lot of rules, and I have to share a room with 2 other boys, but nobody yells, nobody hits. We eat dinner together every night, and Mrs. Henderson makes really good spaghetti." Relief flooded through Jake. "That's good. That's really good." They spent the 30 minutes playing card games and talking about school, motorcycles, anything but the upcoming court hearing. But as the visit ended, Tyler's expression turned serious. "Jake, are you really going to be my foster dad?" "I'm doing everything I can to make that happen. I found us a house, 2 bedrooms, so you'd have your own room. I'm taking all the classes they require. If everything goes right, you could be living with me in about 2 months. What if Uncle Derek wins at court? What if they make me go back?" Jake crouched down to Tyler's level, holding the boy's shoulders gently. "That's not going to happen. We have evidence, we have your statement, and we have people fighting for you. Your uncle hurt you, Tyler. The court isn't going to ignore that." But even as he said the words, Jake felt the weight of uncertainty. He'd seen enough of the legal system to know that nothing was guaranteed. The court hearing arrived on a cold November morning. The courthouse in Smithville was a stolid brick building that had stood since the 1920s, its courtroom filled with wooden benches worn smooth by decades of use. Jake arrived early, dressed in the most formal clothes he owned: dark slacks, a button-down shirt, and the sport coat he'd bought specifically for this occasion. The Steel Brotherhood was there in force. Wrench, Bull, Doc, Rachel, Jinx, and a dozen other members filled the gallery, their presence a silent show of support. Judge Margaret Hendricks, a woman in her early 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, surveyed the courtroom with an expression that gave nothing away. Derek Bennett sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Derek had cleaned up for the hearing, shaved, hair combed, wearing clothes that didn't smell like beer. He looked like a concerned uncle fighting for his nephew. The transformation was nauseating. Tyler sat in the front row with Linda Morrison, looking small and frightened in a button-up shirt that was slightly too big. His eyes found Jake's, and Jake gave him an encouraging nod. The hearing began with Derek's lawyer painting a picture of a devoted uncle who'd stepped up to raise his orphaned nephew despite his own struggles. He presented Derek as a victim of circumstances, a man doing his best who'd been unfairly targeted by vigilantes with no legal authority. "Your Honor," the lawyer said smoothly, "my client admits he's not perfect. He's struggled with employment, he's made mistakes, but the allegations of abuse are unfounded. Tyler is an active child who frequently injures himself. Mr. Bennett has never deliberately harmed his nephew. The interference by Mr. Sullivan and his motorcycle club has been inappropriate and has confused and frightened the child." Jake's hands clenched into fists, but Rachel's hand on his arm steadied him. Then it was the state's turn. The CPS lawyer presented the evidence methodically: photographs of Tyler's injuries, medical records, statements from teachers documenting Tyler's behavioral changes and visible injuries over the past 6 months, and Linda Morrison's report from her interview with Tyler. "Your Honor," the CPS lawyer stated. Tyler Bennett disclosed multiple instances of physical abuse by his uncle. He described being hit, pushed, and verbally berated. The pattern of injuries, combined with the child's testimony and corroborating statements from teachers and medical professionals, paint a clear picture of ongoing abuse. Judge Hendricks reviewed the documents in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up. I'd like to hear from Tyler directly. Tyler was sworn in, his hand trembling as he placed it on the Bible. He sat in the witness chair, his feet not quite touching the floor, looking impossibly young and vulnerable. Judge Hendricks spoke gently. Tyler, I know this is scary, but I need you to tell me the truth about what happened at your uncle's house. Can you do that? Tyler nodded, his voice barely audible. Yes, ma'am. How did you get the black eye that was photographed in October? Tyler's gaze darted to Derek, then quickly away. My uncle hit me. He was mad because I forgot to take out the trash. Has he hit you other times? Yes, ma'am. A lot of times. When he's been drinking mostly. Or when I make him angry. What about the burn on your arm that your teacher reported in September? Tyler's hand went to his forearm instinctively. He grabbed me and pushed my arm against the stove. It was an accident, but it hurt really bad. Derek's lawyer stood. Objection, Your Honor. The child said it was an accident. Judge Hendricks's eyes could have cut glass. Counselor, I heard what he said. Sit down. The questioning continued for another 20 minutes. Tyler answered each question with quiet honesty, describing a home life that was a litany of fear and pain. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom except for Derek's. He sat stone-faced, his jaw clenched. Thank you, Tyler, Judge Hendricks said gently. You've been very brave. You can step down now. As Tyler returned to his seat, the judge turned to Derek. Mr. Bennett, do you have anything to say? Derek stood, his expression a mask of wounded dignity. Your Honor, I love my nephew. I took him in when he had nobody else. I've done my best. If I've made mistakes, I'm sorry, but I would never deliberately hurt him. The judge's expression didn't change. She reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity, then looked up. I've heard the testimony and reviewed the evidence. Based on the pattern of injuries, the child's disclosure, and the corroborating statements from multiple sources, I find that Tyler Bennett was subjected to physical abuse while in the care of his uncle, Derek Bennett. The emergency removal is hereby sustained. Relief crashed through Jake like a wave. Furthermore, Judge Hendricks continued, I am terminating Derek Bennett's guardianship of Tyler Bennett effective immediately. Custody will remain with the state while permanent placement is determined. Mr. Bennett, you are prohibited from any contact with Tyler pending further proceedings. If you violate this order, you will be held in contempt and face criminal charges. Do you understand? Derek's face went purple. This is bullshit. That kid, Mr. Bennett. Judge Hendricks's voice cracked like a whip. You will not speak about that child in such a manner in my courtroom. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Derek's lawyer pulled him back down into his seat, whispering urgently. Derek nodded jerkily. This hearing is adjourned. The judge's gavel came down with finality. The courtroom erupted in muted celebration. The Steel Brotherhood members exchanged relieved looks, and Jake felt Wrench clasp his shoulder. But Jake's attention was on Tyler, who sat frozen, processing what had just happened. Jake walked over to where Tyler sat with Linda Morrison. Hey, buddy, you did it. You told the truth and the judge believed you. Tyler looked up at him with those blue eyes that had seen too much. So I don't have to go back? Never. You never have to go back to that house. Tyler launched himself at Jake, wrapping his thin arms around Jake's waist. Thank you. Thank you for believing me. Always, Tyler. Always. Linda Morrison approached. Mr. Sullivan, your home study has been completed and approved. Your background checks came back clean, and you've completed all required training modules. I'm recommending you for emergency foster placement of Tyler, pending final certification. If you're willing, Tyler could come home with you today. Jake's breath caught. Today? Are you serious? Completely. You'll be under supervision for the first 30 days. I'll conduct weekly home visits to ensure the placement is appropriate. But yes, if you're ready, Tyler can go home with you today. Jake looked down at Tyler, whose expression was a mixture of hope and disbelief. What do you say, buddy? Want to come see your new room? Tyler's answer was to hold on tighter, and Jake felt his heart expand in a way he hadn't known was possible. The first month of having Tyler in his home was an education in patience, healing, and the thousand small ways that trauma manifested. Tyler had nightmares almost every night, waking up screaming from dreams where Derek found him and dragged him back. He hoarded food in his room, unable to trust that meals would come regularly. He flinched at sudden movements and loud voices. But slowly, incrementally, trust began to build. Jake established routines: breakfast together every morning, dinner at 6, bedtime at 8:30 with a story. He never raised his voice, never lifted a hand, never made promises he couldn't keep. The Steel Brotherhood became Tyler's extended family. Wrench taught him about engines, patient and thorough, as Tyler learned to identify different motorcycle parts. Bull continued their checkers games, deliberately losing just often enough to keep Tyler engaged. Doc checked Tyler's old injuries, treating the faded scars with gentle hands. Rachel explained the legal process in kid-friendly terms, preparing Tyler for what came next. And Jinx, with her social work expertise, helped Jake navigate the emotional minefield of parenting a traumatized child. Tyler started at Smithville Elementary in January, entering Mrs. Fitzgerald's third-grade class in the middle of the school year. The transition was rocky. Tyler was behind academically, struggling with reading comprehension and math. But he was smart and motivated, working hard to catch up with extra tutoring from Jake and volunteers from the Steel Brotherhood. The problems started in February. Tyler came home one afternoon with a torn shirt and a bloody nose. Jake's heart stopped. What happened? Tyler wouldn't meet his eyes. Nothing. I fell. The familiar lie set off every alarm in Jake's head. Tyler. We don't do that anymore, remember? We tell the truth, even when it's hard. What really happened? Tyler's lower lip trembled. There are these kids. They found out I'm in foster care. They call me names: orphan, reject, unwanted. Today, one of them pushed me on the playground. I pushed back and we got in a fight. Jake took a breath, forcing down the protective rage. Okay, first, let's get you cleaned up. Then we're going to talk about this. After tending to Tyler's nose and getting him settled with a snack, Jake sat down across from him at the kitchen table. Bullying is serious, Tyler. Nobody has the right to put their hands on you or call you names. We need to tell your teacher and the principal. No! But Tyler's eyes went wide with panic. That'll just make it worse. They'll say I'm a snitch and more kids will join in. Jake recognized the fear, the same calculation he'd seen Tyler make about Derek. The survival instinct that said enduring quietly was safer than fighting back. But this was different. Tyler wasn't trapped anymore. Tyler, you have people in your corner now. Me, the Steel Brotherhood, your teachers. We won't let this continue. You can't be at school with me. You can't protect me there. The helplessness in Tyler's voice echoed Jake's own fears. Tyler was right. Jake couldn't be there every moment. But maybe there was another way. That evening, Jake called an emergency Steel Brotherhood meeting. He laid out the situation: Tyler being bullied, the school's apparent ineffectiveness in stopping it, and Tyler's fear that reporting would make things worse. We need to send a message, Bull rumbled. Show those kids and their parents that Tyler isn't alone. What are you thinking? Wrench asked. An idea was forming in Jake's mind, audacious and probably slightly insane. What if we showed up at the school? Not to intimidate kids, that's not who we are, but to show support. To let Tyler and everyone else know he's got a family that stands behind him. Rachel leaned forward. You're talking about a visibility action, like when BACA members escort kids to court or stand watch outside homes. Exactly. We ride to the school, we're visible. We show that Tyler's not some throwaway foster kid. He's got people. Jinx nodded slowly. It could work, but we'd need to coordinate with the school administration. We can't just show up with 20 motorcycles and expect them to be okay with it. Jake called Principal Warren that night, explaining the situation and the proposed plan. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mr. Sullivan, I appreciate your concern for Tyler. And I'll be honest, I'm aware of the bullying situation. We've spoken to the students involved, but enforcement has been challenging. If you and your club want to make a statement of support, I think it could be powerful. But it needs to be done right. They worked out the details over the next week. The Steel Brotherhood would arrive at school drop-off time on a Friday morning. They'd park their bikes in the visitor lot, and Jake would walk Tyler to class, accompanied by members of the club. It would be visible, supportive, and entirely peaceful. Jake explained the plan to Tyler that evening. The boy's reaction was a mixture of excitement and terror. You're really going to ride your motorcycles to my school? We are. Is that okay with you? Tyler thought about it seriously. The kids who bully me, they're going to be scared. Maybe, but we're not there to scare anyone. We're there to support you, to show that you matter and that you have a family who loves you. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. You love me? Jake realized what he'd said, and the truth of it hit him like a freight train. Somewhere between that first burger at the corner cafe and now, this boy had become his son in every way that mattered. Yeah, Tyler, I do. I love you. Tyler launched himself across the room into Jake's arms, sobbing. I love you too. I wish... He paused, then pushed forward. I wish you could be my real dad, not just foster. Jake held the boy close, his own eyes burning. Tyler, Rachel's been working on something. If you want, I can file for adoption. It's a long process, and we'd have to go through more court hearings, but if it works, I would legally be your father. Would you want that? Tyler pulled back, his face streaked with tears but shining with hope. Yes, yes, please. Okay then, we'll make it happen. Friday morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of Texas winter day where the sky was impossibly blue and the air had a bite to it. Jake helped Tyler get ready for school, making sure his clothes were clean and his backpack was packed. Tyler was nervous, his hands shaking as he tied his shoes. What if they laugh at me? Tyler asked. Then they laugh. But you'll know, and they'll know, that you've got people who have your back. That's what matters. At 7:30, the Steel Brotherhood began gathering in the parking lot of Jake's house. One by one, motorcycles arrived. Harleys of every model, their chrome gleaming in the morning sun. Wrench on his Heritage Softail, Bull on his massive Road King, Doc on his Dynawide Glide, Rachel on her Sportster, Jinx on her Street Glide. And they kept coming. Members Jake had only called occasionally, friends of the club who'd heard about Tyler's situation and wanted to show support. By the time everyone had arrived, there were 27 motorcycles lined up, 27 riders wearing Steel Brotherhood vests, all there for one 8-year-old boy. Tyler stood on the porch, staring at the assembled bikes with an expression of awe. They all came for me? Every single one, Jake confirmed. You ready? Tyler squared his small shoulders and nodded. The ride to Smithville Elementary was unlike anything the town had ever seen. 27 motorcycles moving in formation, their engines rumbling like thunder, escorting one pickup truck where Jake drove with Tyler in the passenger seat. They'd deliberately chosen to arrive 15 minutes before the first bell, when parents were dropping off students and the parking lot would be crowded. As they turned onto the street leading to the school, students and parents stopped and stared. The sound of the motorcycles echoed off buildings, impossible to ignore. They pulled into the visitor parking lot in perfect formation, and one by one, the engines cut off. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake opened Tyler's door and helped him out. Tyler's hand found Jake's, holding tight. Together, they walked toward the school entrance, and behind them, the entire Steel Brotherhood fell into formation, a phalanx of leather-vested bikers creating a protective corridor. Students lined the walkway, watching with wide eyes. Some of the younger kids looked scared, some looked impressed, but all of them were watching as Tyler Bennett, the foster kid who'd been labeled an easy target, walked into school flanked by nearly 30 bikers who moved with military precision. Principal Warren stood at the entrance, and to his credit, he was smiling. "Good morning, Tyler, Mr. Sullivan. Welcome, Steel Brotherhood." Wrench stepped forward and offered his hand to the principal. "Sir, we're here to support Tyler. We won't cause any disruption, we just wanted to make a statement." "Message received loud and clear," Principal Warren said. He looked at the assembled students. "Everyone, this is an example of what community looks like. Tyler has people who care about him, and that's something we should all respect." Jake walked Tyler to Mrs. Fitzgerald's classroom, the hallway parting before them like the Red Sea. At the classroom door, Tyler turned and looked back at the assembled bikers who stood at parade rest, hands clasped behind backs, expressions serious but not threatening. "Thank you," Tyler said, his voice small but carrying in the quiet hallway. "Thank you for being my family." Bull's gruff voice responded, echoing what every person there felt. "We're proud of you, kid. Have a good day at school." Tyler disappeared into his classroom, and Jake felt a hand on his shoulder. Rachel stood beside him, her eyes suspiciously bright. "That was perfect," she said quietly. The Steel Brotherhood dispersed slowly, members returning to their bikes and riding off to their various jobs and responsibilities. But the message had been sent and received. By lunchtime, the story had spread through the entire school. Tyler Bennett wasn't some helpless foster kid. He had a family. He had a biker army. He had people who would show up for him. The bullying stopped that day and never resumed. 3 weeks later, Jake filed formal adoption papers. The process would take months, more home studies, more court appearances, more evaluations. But Rachel was confident. Tyler had expressed his clear desire to be adopted, Jake had proven himself as a foster parent, and there was no one contesting the adoption. Derek Bennett had disappeared after the court hearing, skipping town to avoid the criminal charges CPS had filed for child abuse. A warrant was out for his arrest, but for now, he was gone, and that was good enough. On a warm March evening, Jake and Tyler sat on the porch of their little house on Oakwood Street. Tyler was reading a book. His skills had improved dramatically with consistent support and tutoring, while Jake worked on a small carburetor he'd brought home from the garage. "Jake?" Tyler said without looking up from his book. "Yeah, buddy. When the adoption is final, can I call you Dad?" Jake's hands stilled on the carburetor. He looked at the boy beside him. This child who'd been broken and scared and so desperately alone, who was now healing and growing and learning to trust again. "Tyler, you can call me Dad right now if you want. You don't have to wait for a judge to say it's okay." Tyler set down his book and looked at Jake with those blue eyes that weren't quite so ancient anymore. "Okay, Dad." The word hit Jake square in the chest, filling spaces he hadn't known were empty. "Yeah, son, I'm glad you bought me that burger." Jake laughed, pulling Tyler into a hug. "Me too, kiddo. Me too." 6 months later, on a September morning that felt like redemption wrapped in sunshine, Jake and Tyler stood before Judge Hendricks in the same courtroom where Tyler's custody had been terminated from Derek. But this time, the atmosphere was celebratory. The Steel Brotherhood filled the gallery once again, but instead of tense worry, there was joy. Judge Hendricks smiled as she reviewed the final adoption papers. "Tyler Bennett, This court has reviewed all the evidence and documentation. Mr. Jacob Sullivan has completed all requirements for adoption, and you have expressed your desire for this adoption to proceed. It is therefore my honor to grant this adoption. Tyler, you are now officially Tyler Bennett Sullivan, son of Jacob Sullivan. Congratulations to you both. The courtroom erupted in applause. Tyler turned and threw his arms around Jake, his father, while the Steel Brotherhood cheered and cameras flashed. Outside the courthouse, under a brilliant Texas sky, Jake lifted Tyler onto the seat of his Harley for the first time. The boy wore a helmet Jake had bought specially for this occasion, decorated with Superman logos. "You ready for this?" Jake asked. Tyler's grin could have lit up the whole state. "I was born ready, Dad. That's my boy." They rode through Smithville with the Steel Brotherhood flanking them, not as rescuers anymore, but as family celebrating a victory. They rode past the corner cafe where Amanda stood on the sidewalk, waving and crying happy tears. They rode past Smithville Elementary, where a banner hung reading, "Congratulations, Tyler." They rode past the old garage, where this whole journey had begun. And as they rode, Jake thought about the long road that had brought them here. A bruised boy in a cafe booth, a desperate phone call in the night, a courtroom battle, and 1,000 small moments of trust being built. He thought about how broken he'd felt after Afghanistan, how lost and purposeless. Tyler had saved him just as much as he'd saved Tyler. That evening, the Steel Brotherhood threw a celebration at the garage. There was cake, chocolate Tyler's favorite, pizza, and enough noise and laughter to wake the whole neighborhood. Tyler ran between the bikers, collecting high fives and hugs, his face flushed with happiness. Bull presented Tyler with a leather vest, child-sized, with Steel Brotherhood patches and a special patch that read, "Tyler Sullivan, Forever Family." "You're one of us now, kid," Bull rumbled. "Official member. When you're old enough, we'll teach you to ride." Tyler put on the vest with reverence, and Jake had to turn away to hide the tears in his eyes. Later, after everyone had gone home, and Tyler was tucked into his bed, his own bed, in his own room, in his forever home, Jake sat on the edge of the mattress. "Dad?" Tyler's voice was sleepy. "Yeah, son? Do you think my mom and dad would be okay with this? With you adopting me?" Jake thought carefully about his answer. "I think they'd be grateful that you found someone to love you and keep you safe. I think they'd be proud of how brave you've been. And Tyler, I'm going to make sure you know about them. We'll put pictures up. We'll talk about your memories of them. They'll always be part of your story." Tyler nodded, his eyes drifting closed. "I miss them, but I'm happy now. Is that okay?" "That's more than okay, buddy. That's exactly how it should be. Love you, Dad. Love you too, son. More than you'll ever know." Jake turned off the light and stood in the doorway, watching Tyler sleep peacefully. No nightmares tonight, just the deep sleep of a child who finally felt safe. In the morning, they would wake up and eat breakfast together. Jake would drop Tyler off at school, and Tyler would run to join his friends, wearing his Steel Brotherhood vest with pride. Jake would go to the garage and work on motorcycles with Wrench, planning the club's next charity event. They would live their normal, beautiful, ordinary lives. A child with a purple eye had begged a stranger to be his father. A broken veteran had found purpose in protecting someone more vulnerable than himself. A motorcycle club had shown up when it mattered most, and together they had created something that transcended biology and law. They had created family. The Steel Brotherhood had made many stands over the years, protecting children and standing against injustice. But the day 27 bikers rode to Smithville Elementary to support one 8-year-old boy would become legend, a reminder that sometimes the most epic battles aren't fought with fists or weapons, but with presence, commitment, and the unwavering message that no child should ever face their demons alone. Tyler Bennett Sullivan would grow up knowing he was loved, protected, and valued. He would carry the lessons learned from his father and his biker family. That courage means asking for help, that family is made not just by blood, but by choice, and that showing up matters more than being perfect. And Jake Sullivan, the mechanic and veteran who thought he was too broken to be anyone's father, would learn that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. In a small Texas town, in a house on Oakwood Street, a father and son built a life together, one day, one moment, one act of love at a time, and it was epic.